we've talked just a bit about this new asylum bill that has started progressing through the House of Commons very recently. And as is always with the current Conservatives, especially in this case, it's more about very short-termism and scoring political points. And in this case, the bill is described and designed in such a way as to look tough, like it looks like it's solving problems. But in reality, this is not solving any of the problems of the current immigration system that we even see today in our country. And it's not just about, quote, illegal immigration or asylum seekers, because again, historically at the moment, that is indeed very low. And we live on an island, so it's very hard for illegals to actually come here. Like I say, both these things are incredibly low. We have a thing in the UK where we, quote, talk about immigration. But you'll notice that most Conservatives do not split up the immigration to legal immigration to illegal immigration, because when they start to talk about illegal immigration and you start to generally look at the facts and figures, then it doesn't add up. But when you look at the legal immigration numbers, which is what they're really after doing, which again will have a huge detriment effect to our economy, future development, and various other things, it's going to be so bad. I mean, who cares if someone from Africa or wherever wants to come and be a British citizen? I really don't care. More power to them if they want to come here. But let's get into this, because like I've always said, the devil is sometimes in the detail. And like I say, this bill is designed to look tough, but is more, shall we say, written on toilet paper than vellum. So please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can indeed buy me coffee. And thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. And of course, please do remember to keep on wearing your masks and engage in social distancing when you're out there. So let's get on with the story. So this comes from The Guardian. Oh, there we go. And the title is, Priti Patel's Borders Bill is designed to look tough, not solve any of the real problems. We are living at a time where displacement is a major feature of life on this planet, but it's one that we have actually the resources to deal with. Faced with that reality, wealthy countries have a choice between acting in solidarity with the rest of the world's population or just pulling up the drawbridge. Judging by the contents of the Nationality and Borders Bill, which has its second reading in Parliament on the 19th and 20th of July, the UK is opting for the latter. Although trailed by the same Home Secretary Priti Patel, who is the minister in charge, as a major reformer of this country's, quote, broken immigration system, its main effect will be to add an extra dose of cruelty to the already existing arrangements. The bill proposes to give the Home Secretary the power to expand the camp-style accommodation established last year, and to send asylum seekers overseas for processing, even if no country has yet been agreed to actually receive them. Prison sentences for illegal entry to the UK will be increased, and with a clause that redefines the offence of facilitating illegal immigration, most probably aimed at making it easier to prosecute asylum seekers who steer boats across the channel, which has been worded so vaguely that legal experts point out it could be very likely to criminalise the Royal National Lifeboat Institution just for the very act of saving lives at sea. The government's hope is that these measures will deter people from making unauthorised journeys to the UK. People who do so will face this harsh and punitive system, where refugees are resettled by official schemes will receive a more comfortable welcome. Although human rights groups have also heavily criticised the plan, even the UN's refugee agency, UNRWA, has warned that a two-tier system risks breaching commitments under the Refugee Convention that clearly protect the universal rights to seek asylum. This government claims to be motivated by humanitarian principles, Patel said, But that new bill will ensure that the access to the UK's asylum system is based on need, not the ability to pay people smugglers. It is an easy point out of the hollowness of this claim. Only a tiny fraction of the world's refugee population is resettled via official schemes, leaving many people with no other option but to attempt dangerous journeys. But there is a familiar logic to it. The idea that tough deterrent issues are not necessarily to keep anxious voters happy, but are ultimately in the best interest of refugees themselves, is one of the politicians in many parts of the rich world find appealing. A telling account comes from a recent inside view of the EU's response to the refugee crisis that peaked in 2015 and 2016. Hugh Bradley, the former advisor to the then President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, describes the striking candour of how the bloc was initially paralysed and split between the European leaders between the doves and hawks. Those who wanted to prioritise Europe's humanitarian values but did not necessarily think about the consequences of their actions, and those who saw border control and national sovereignty as the priority. Eventually, suggests Bradley, a realist position won out, which saw dangerous migration routes across the Mediterranean largely closed down. A revolution that has ultimately saved lives, since fewer people have attempted the journey. As Bradley puts it, the heart will always have its day, but the head will always quietly insist, yes, but then what? Such an approach may diffuse a political crisis, but it still comes at a cost. For the EU, the result has been to trap thousands of people in dire conditions in Libya, where torture and abuse are common, or the purgatory of Greece's refugee camps. Deaths in the Mediterranean are now lower than at the peak of the crisis, since the overall number of people crossing is lower, but they continue nonetheless. And at least 1,000 people have drowned in the Mediterranean this year. The UN says that the EU is partially to blame, since it fails to answer distress calls and has helped to push migrants back to Libya, while volunteer rescuers continue to be harassed by European governments. Yet, while the EU was faced with a genuine emergency in 2015, larger than usual numbers of people were travelling to Europe in search of refuge, and Europe's asylum system was unable to cope. And the UK does not have that excuse. Asylum claims in the UK are historically low. The spectacle of people crossing the Channel has been fuel for right-wing moral panic. But it is happening largely because of people's method of travel has changed, whereas once they might have stowed away in lorries, they now use boats. Instead of putting an end to these journeys, it is more likely this bill will increase the number of people who will get stuck in the limbo of the underfunded asylum system. Since the new punitive measures progress, it will be open to legal challenge, and a backlog of more than 100,000 asylum cases has reached record levels. While the Home Office has recently been accused of running a secret, potentially unlawful policy of detaining people in order to deport them without properly considering their asylum claims. The trouble with the politicians' eye view is that it fails to take into account the fundamental reality of displacement, which means those who have lost their homes, who feel compelled to move wherever the cost, even when they reach the country that is nominally safe, some will keep on moving because they are looking for places where they can build lives rather than just simply exist. When refugees choose to travel to the UK, for instance, they frequently do so because of existing conditions, whether through the language or even family, or because Britain is a former imperial power with historical ties to many parts of the world. But by the time a person in this situation reaches the UK's shores, they are witness to the systems that have failed several times over. Something has gone terribly wrong to push them from their home in the first place. But this is being compounded by a global failure to actually meet their needs. If the government was actually serious about ending the dangers of journeys they take, then it would concentrate on fixing those systems and opening up safe routes in the meantime, rather than chasing the fantasy that there's the optimum level of cruelty at which people in desperate situations can be just made to disappear. And this is just going to cause so much more harm and unnecessary cruelty. And I think it's been said a lot before, but the Tory party has really returned to being that of the nasty party of the what they used to be called in the late 80s and 90s. They've gone back to form in all true goodness to a point. David Cameron's moderate revolution, as it was called, didn't really get rid of this nastiness. It just managed just to cover it up a lot better than they had been in the past. And this is if this is how they treat people in desperate situations trying to seek asylum, then how harshly will they treat people who are the poorest in this country, who are actually citizens of this country? You should actually be asking yourselves that question. If they're willing to take this amount of cruelty to asylum seekers, then how are they going to treat people on benefits, people who are, disabled, vulnerable people, as we said yesterday? Cruelty just simply isn't the answer. And there are sensible ideas out there to solve these problems. And we've talked briefly about some of them before, but we don't have time to go over that now. Maybe we will another time, but there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can indeed buy me coffee. And as always, please do remember to keep on wearing your masks. And of course, please do maintain social distancing when you are out and about where possible. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.